Hello and welcome back to Kentucky Farms Mapping. On this episode, we are going to be modifying the pasture on Farm 2, the horse pasture that we have here. We're going to be changing it from a rectangular shape navigation mesh into a triangular shape, sort of, navigation mesh, and adding a fence to it. So I'll show you one way that you can put the fence on. Hope you enjoy the episode, and thanks for watching. First thing, I want to make sure that I thank Elk Mountain Modding for giving me permission to modify the things that are on here. He has graciously let me change his mods and use his house and a couple other things that we have here also. So thank you for that. That's one thing you want to make sure of if you're going to do anything like that, is like this, is you want to make sure that you get permission from the modders before you do it. Okay, so in our mods folder, we have the unzipped Frog Creek map. Okay, we need to get into the mods and take the mod that we're going to modify and place it in the placeables folder, which is right here. It's under the main directory of your map, and then it's under maps. So in this particular case, there's my placeables. So we want to go back to the mods. And this particular mod is zipped inside with some other mods that are here. So it's the EMR, having trouble spelling EMR. We have the EMR ranch set extension. Okay, so we just copy that, take it into our map here under the mods, Frog Creek, maps, placeables, and we're going to put it in here. Okay, so we're just going to paste it right there, and there's our EMR ranch set extension. I've already have a bunch of other stuff in here. You notice I have a horse pasture. This is for the other pastures that are there. I want to make a specific directory for this particular pasture that we're working on. So I'm just going to right click and create a new folder, and we'll just call this, take my cap locks off, horse pasture mod. Okay, we'll stick that ranch set extension inside that horse pasture mod. Okay, now what we need to do is extract this. So we extract it right into here. And what it's going to do is create another folder that has the same name, that has all this stuff in it. We're just going to take all that stuff and get it out of there and drag it back into this folder. We don't need the zipped folder anymore, so we just delete that. We take this, and notice there's a whole bunch of stuff here. We're just going to select it all. We're going to cut it, and we're going to paste it back in our horse pasture mod here. And then we're going to get rid of this ranch set extension folder. There we go. Now, you'll notice that all of this stuff in here, okay, there's all kinds of mods that come in this extension. All we're concerned with are the mods that deal with the horse open range horse pasture. Notice there's like a boiler, cattle guard, chicken shed, some different things like that. There's some things that we may leave in here that we really don't need, but we're just going to clean it up a little bit. Okay. These folders that are here are the sounds and the textures for all of these mods. I'm not going to go through all of these folders and figure out which textures and which sounds and all of that deal with just this mod. So we're going to leave all of these folders in here. Okay, we're going to get rid of some of this other stuff. We don't need the boiler or the cattle guard or the chicken stuff or the fuel tank or the greenhouse. Okay, we're just going to get rid of this. Okay, now in your mod itself, where it says brand elk right here, this is a picture file. DDSs are picture files. Okay, an image file. Okay, this image file is used in the mod itself, and it's what kind of it's shown, I believe, one of the first images that you see in the store. I'm not really, honestly, I don't know for sure, but we're going to leave that anyway, just for the heck of it. We're going to get rid of all of these other things: fuel tanks, greenhouses, hay barns, okay, horse barn. Notice there's a horse NavMesh. Well, this horse NavMesh, this one goes with the horse barn, so we don't need that either. Okay, we can get rid of all of that stuff. You'll see that there's a whole bunch of stuff down here that we can get rid of. Navigation mesh stuff here. Delete those. Okay. We do need this navigation mesh horse. This is the one that deals with the open range horse pasture. Okay, so we want to leave that. We want to leave the i3D shapes file. Okay, and we also want to get rid of the sheep and the cattle stuff here. And here is the mod that we're actually dealing with, which is the open range horses. So I'll clean this up and get rid of some of this other stuff, and then we'll get started with this. Okay, this is what we're left with here. So we have these folders, and then we have the files that are down here that deal with the open range horse mod. Okay, we were, like I said, we really don't need the brand elk, but I'm going to leave it in here anyway. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with. Now what we need to do is get into Giants Editor, insert this in there, make some changes to it, save it, take it out, put it back in. So there's a couple of things we have left to do. Okay, so we are back in Giants Editor here. And what we're going to do is import our mod that we're going to make changes to and sort of put it in the correct place. We'll do a final placing a little bit later on, but we're going to get it just about where we want it, and then make some changes to the navigation mesh, make a new navigation mesh actually, and we'll be able to use it as a triangle instead of the rectangular shape that it is now. So what we need to do is we need to go to File and Import, and we need to go to our Placeables folder where we created that, and it's our horse pasture mod. Double click on that, and we don't want the mesh. This is not what we're dealing with here. Okay, what we want is the open range horses. So we open that, and it brings it in, and notice it says horse barn small. Now you'll see this with other mods as well as with this one. What's happened here is this mod is probably started in some other form from some other mod, so it has a name that really doesn't have anything to do with this mod at all, but that's just, it was left the way it was, and we're going to leave some things that the way they are for what we're doing also. So, okay, take a look down here, you notice underneath there's all kinds of stuff that's in here. There's the horse barn small, there's teleport nodes, food storage, water. Okay, if you go down to the bottom, there's a placement marker and some different things like that. All right, so what we need to do is put it in here. And in order to do that, we hit Control B, and we're going to click just about where it goes, and this is what we get. Now, the blue part that you see right here, this is something that Elk Mountain Modding has done with this mod, which is great. This is an overlay plane that's blue, of course, as you can see. And what it does is it shows you where you can put the fences. It shows you the outline of the navigation mesh. if this wasn't in here, you're not able to actually see the navigation mesh itself. Okay, so he placed this in here so you're able to see where the fences go. We want to turn it off because we're not going to modify this particular one. We're not going to use this as a mod. We're going to know where the fences go when we put it in here. So, okay, we don't need this. But all we're going to do for right now is we're going to turn this off. And it's under the placement marker and that plane right there. So if I click on that and come over here to where it's under the transform and visibility, we just click on that and now it goes away. Okay, so we can't see it anymore. That's how you turn it off. Now, we may want it on in order for us to rotate this around. We can turn some other planes on. There's different ways that you can do this. Okay, if you want to actually see the planes that make up the navigation mesh, this is not the navigation mesh. Okay, I want to make sure everyone understands that. They've changed this in later versions of Giants Editor and Farming Simulator. Okay, the navigation mesh is a completely different file that you create. It's not a part of the mod itself. Whenever you insert the mod, it pulls the navigation mesh in with it. Okay, so what we can do is if we go to, there's our horse barn small. If we come down here where it says navigation root node, notice that's grayed out. Okay, all it is the visibility of those are turned off. So if we turn that on, we get the actual planes that are used to create the navigation mesh. Okay, so we want the navigation root node, we want that clicked on, and we can come in here, we could rotate this around if we click on that. Okay, now if we just have the navigation root node itself selected, all we're going to do is rotate the planes. We don't want to just rotate the planes, we want to rotate everything. So make sure the horse barn small is selected. We can come in here and rotate this around and get it about where we want it. Okay, we can get it pretty close to here. I have some white marks on the ground to show just about where I want the feeder system to go. Okay, we can't see them. So if you want, we could actually come in here and just turn off some of these planes if you want to. We don't have to turn them all off. We can if you want, but it's not necessary. Now, the reason that we have separate planes in here is because of the feeding area right there. Animals in Farming Simulator don't recognize collisions. So even though there's a collision on the feeding area here and on the water trough, it doesn't matter. The animals would still walk through there. So by creating this with 4 separate planes, there's one here, one on the left, and one on the right. It leaves an open area right there, which is actually the feeding area. So the animals will not walk through that open area. They just walk up to it and feed. Okay, so what we want to do is sort of get it where it goes. I'm going to turn off the visibility of this one, and I'll turn off the visibility of that one, leave the others on. So now we can sort of see where this goes. Let me zoom in a little bit. And we can move this around and get it just about where it goes. Let me turn another one of those planes off. There we go. Okay, now we can see. All right, we're going to move it back this way a little bit. Select the right thing. There we go. Move it back this way a little bit. Move it over a little bit. You know, again, we don't have to have it perfect here. Okay? We'll do that later. We want it oriented pretty much where it goes. And I'll show you why, just so we can add some more planes to it here. Now, one thing we want to make sure of, whenever we create what we're doing right now, it doesn't matter where this is, whether it's up, down, okay? If the actual feeding areas were on the ground, you may not be able to see the entire plane that we have here, okay? I'm going to raise it up a little bit so we can see everything. What is important is that every plane that we create needs to be on the same y-axis as this plane or any of the other planes that you have. All of those planes need to be on the same y-axis. The height of those needs to be the same. So we don't want to change that. They have changed this in Farm Sim 22, I believe, where it doesn't matter where your planes are located, the animals are still going to walk on the terrain itself. So the animals do recognize where the terrain is and will walk on the terrain. Okay, so we're just going to kind of make sure that we're up in the air a little bit so we can see everything. We're going to turn all of our planes, the visibility of all of our planes back on so we can just see what we're doing here a little bit better. This really doesn't take very long to do. It's a little time consuming explaining things, but it really does not take very long to do this. What we're going to do is we can take any of these planes, or we could create a new one. Okay, I just like taking planes that are already here, and we're going to copy it, move it, rotate it, change the size of it, do whatever we need to, excuse me, in order to get the correct shape for this. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to select this plane. I don't like changing the original, so I'm just going to leave the original like it is. If I hit Control D, okay, it will copy that plane and make a copy of it right on top of the other one, and now we can move it around. Okay, so I'm going to move this over here. I'll rotate it, get it where I want it to go this way. We can move it up and down. By clicking on the box at the end of the arrow, I can expand it. Okay, so I can make it as long as I want to. Okay, so you get the idea of how this is done. You can rotate it around, get it to fill in the area. Now, one thing to remember here is we're creating a navigation mesh for the animals to walk. We're not creating a fence. Okay, so it doesn't really matter where this mesh is. It doesn't have to be exactly where your fence is going. If you want your animals to walk right up to the fence, then yes, you need to be really close to where you want to put your fence with this. But we could put the fence clear out here somewhere and it wouldn't matter. The animals would only walk in this area, so they would not walk through the fence. They just wouldn't walk up to the edge of it. If you put the fence inside here, which I don't know why you would want to do that, but if you put the fence inside here, the animals would walk through the fence. So the fence and the navigation mesh are two completely different things. Okay, you just want to make sure that you're aware of that. So, like I said, we can move these around, we can overlap them. Overlapping it doesn't make any difference. We can make it whatever size we want it to be. Stick it out there a little bit further if we want. Okay. We won't go too far on that direction. Okay, so you get the idea of how we can place these in here. We're going to place a couple more planes down here, fill the rest of this in, and then I'll come back. Okay, after spending way too much time being anal with all of this, this is the shape that I've come up with for our navigation mesh. Now what we need to do is export this. Everything that we have here, we're going to export it, create a 3D file, i3D file of this item, which is the modified open horse pasture mod that we started with. Okay, and we're going to give it a different name once we get rid of it. So what I like to do is just collapse all this stuff. Okay, and get back down to the original. That way I don't make a mistake and click on something that I shouldn't. You want to make sure that you have the entire thing selected. And you notice when I pick it, you'll see all of the planes that I put in there. Doesn't matter how many planes you have. Doesn't matter that they overlap. Doesn't matter that there may be a little bit of an edge overlay, whether there's gaps in it like you see here. Okay, all you're doing is just specifying where the animals are going to walk. That's it. That's all we're doing here. Okay, so we want to select this horse barn small, and we're going to export this. So we want to go to File, Export Selection with Files. Okay, then it asks us where we want to put it. We want to put it in that same folder where everything else was. And we're going to give it a different file name. We're going to put in, we'll just do modded open range horses. Okay, so that's mine now, or this is the one that I modified. It's not my mod, it's just the one part that I modified here. So we want to save that. It asks us, do you want to get the parent directory structure? Since we're going to insert it back in here, we could do that. I don't know that it really matters. We're just going to say yes for now. You want to keep the game relative paths? Yes, you want to say, yes, you want to do that. So what we've done is we've actually created another i3D file of this object. We don't need this in here anymore. Okay, we're going to get rid of it. We're going to reinsert it a little bit later. So right now we're just going to delete that. Get rid of it from here. We're going to save our map file that we're working on. Okay, and I have seen other modders where they'll just go in and open another i3D file. For some reason, when I do that, I have a problem with the game crashing, or with the Giants editor crashing. So normally what I'll do is I'll just close it, and then I'll just open another file. So we'll get it open back up, and we'll get back in here. Okay, so we are back in Giants editor here. We need to open our modded open range horses. Okay, this is the original one right here. We don't really need that anymore. You could leave it if you want to. Okay, I kind of tend to get mixed up with stuff a little bit, so I'm just going to delete it, get it out of there for now, because we don't have it. Everything that was in there is now in this modded open range horses. So we want to open this. Okay, and you'll see that it's loaded, but we don't see anything. The reason we don't see anything is because it's way off out in space somewhere. What you do when you open your i3D file here for the first time like this, we are actually at 000. So what we need to do is just change all of these. We want everything in here under the main area, not everything, not all of this stuff, just the main folder under the scene graph. We want this to be located at 0, 0, 0, and we want to rotate it also to 0. That way we just start fresh, and then we can rotate it and move it whenever we get into the map and place it in there. So this is the area that we have right here. Okay, that's it. Now what we need to do is make a navigation mesh that will actually cover this. Okay, if we come down here and take a look at this, the reason we see all that is because our navigation root node is visible. We can turn the visibility of that off, and then you won't see it. All you'll see is just the feeder areas and all of that. That's the way that the mod originally was when we started. So I'm going to leave the visibility on for now. Okay, what we need to do is we need to make a couple of changes to the planes that are on here, and then we need to create our navigation mesh. Not very hard to do at all, really. So we come down here. It's a little time consuming. We go select our plane right here. What we need to change on the plane is if we come over here to the right and we see the shape of this. Okay, notice right here, we're going to make some changes to these a little bit later also. You'll notice right here where it says build NavMesh mask hex number. Okay, this needs to be FE. If you click on the 3 dots, you'll get this NavMesh box that pops up. In order for this to be FE, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 checked. And notice it says FE, and we hit OK. You have to do this for each individual plane. I don't know why the box keeps popping back up over there, but it does. So we'll just do it over here. Make sure it says FE. We hit OK. I'll do this with the rest of them and then be back. Okay, all of our planes are set to FE. Now, what we want to do is create our navigation mesh. In order to do that, you want to make sure your navigation route node is selected right here. We want to go to Create Navigation Mesh. Okay, there's only a couple of things here that we need to change. Most of this stuff is okay. One thing that we need to change is the radius. The radius deals with the size of the animal. I'm not sure what the number is for the smaller animals, but for cows and horses, that radius should be set to 1.2. Okay. Now, the other thing is, here you have your shape build mask, the hex, and it says FF. I've seen other videos about creating navigation meshes, and if you want a really good video to show you how to do this, Shy Wizard has one. I think Farmer Bob may have one, but Shy Wizards is a really good one. You could watch that also, and it will help you with navigation meshes if you need it. Okay, so the shape build mask here, I've done this before with cows and have not changed this to FE. And what happened was the cows seemed to wander off of the navigation mesh. They were just kind of, it almost looked like they were offset a little bit. But then when I went back and changed it to FE, it seemed to work okay. So we're going to go ahead and change it to FE in here also. You do it exactly the same way that we did all the individual planes. All right, so our navigation mesh is FE. Our radius is set to 1.2. Okay, then all we have to do, we don't have to worry about any of this other stuff. All we have to do is hit Create. Okay, and it will tell us down at the bottom, the output is 44 polygons, 76 vertices. It says it's done in 126 milliseconds. So, I mean, it takes about as long for you to click the button as it does for it to create it. Okay, so our nav mesh is down at the very bottom. This is our navigation mesh right here. Okay, now our navigation mesh is separate from everything else that we have here. Okay, again, it's its own file. So what we need to do is export this. So we go to File, Export Selection. The reason we just do Export Selection is there's no files with it. It's just that one mesh. Before, when I said we're going to keep some things with the same name, we're going to keep this the same name. We're just going to modify the one that's there. So we click the navigation mesh horse. We hit save. It says we want to replace it. Yes, we do. And that's it. Okay, we could actually delete this. We don't even need it in here anymore. I tend to leave it. I couldn't tell you why. I just do. But what I also have done is come in here and turn the visibility of it off so we can't see it. So, okay, so it won't show up. Okay. So now we have this. All of our planes are visible at this point. Okay, and we're going to use that to put our fences down. Then we can come back and turn them off. Okay, I didn't take the time to, you remember before when we talked about the placement marker and the plane that was in there? I didn't take the time to change that plane to make it fit this size. Okay, it's not really necessary because we're not using this as a mod. It's a one-time placement in the map. So we can use the available planes, make sure our fence fits in there correctly, and then we can come back and turn all of these planes off and it'll work just fine, hopefully. Okay, so what we need to do now is get into some XML editing, some things like that. We want to save this first. And once that's saved, we can get out of here and get in and do some XML things. That's going to be it for the first part of this video. We'll have part 2 here in a couple of days. We'll do some XML editing, And we'll also get our new NavMesh and our mod stuck into the map and see how it works. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.